there is a conspiracy, or there is an idea that the Japanese people are actually connected to one of the lost tribes of Israel. Anyway, as you see here, we've got Tengu, okay? Now, okay, we're the nose thing, right? Japanese people all have very small noses, right? But Tengu has this giant nose that just sticks off his face. It's a very unique feature. And all the Japanese think, foreigners, even me, I never thought I had a big nose, but when I came here, everyone started saying, "Oh, hana takai," like, means you have a big nose. It's a good thing in Japan, don't be self-conscious about it. Anyway, so he's got the big nose, all right? So maybe he's not, you know, from Japan, as they would think, right? Or of Asian descent, right? Also, the top little hat here, okay? The Jewish have a tradition where they wear this hat and they have a couple other things on their arms. I think it's called tefillin. So the hat, right? That could be a Jewish hat. Also, this scroll that he's holding, all right? Now, the Japanese word for tiger is tora. And what he is holding, the Japanese call Tora no Maki, the Torah scroll. And if you know anything about Jewish history and all of that, they're the holy book, right? Well, I guess it's the Old Testament. I don't know. Don't quote me on any of that. Is the Torah, right? That's a extremely important thing in Jewish culture. The Torah, right? All right, so there's that. And there's also a depiction somewhere of Fudo Myo, which is one of the Buddhist gods of like an afterlife world or something like that, or one of the wrathful deities. I'm not quite sure, but Fudo Myo is in this picture. It's a mandala. It's called the Tengu mandala. And underneath Fudo Myo is 7 Tengu. And, right, the 7 lost tribes of Israel. Interesting. So I don't know, don't quote me on any of this. This is the Tengu conspiracy. Today I came all the way up to Tengu no Iwa. This is apparently one of the places that Tengu lived. So somebody came and put this statue up here, and it's got this amazing view. But anyway, for you kanji hunters, Tengu, all right? Ten means heaven. Gu is an old Chinese character for dog. It's not the character that's used now as Inu for dog, but gu or gol. The Chinese pronounce it gol, but in the Japanese pronounce it kol. But anyway, Tengu.
ここに描かれたものこそクオテさんの魔物だという。その顔はまさに天狗。しかもまるで生身の人間を描き写したかのように描かれている。
想像というんじゃなくて、実際に、何がしかのモデルがあってああいう絵が描かれたんだと思いますけどもね。
モデルがやっぱりあった。
なんと天狗にはモデルがいた。そして曼荼羅の天狗はあのユダヤの面と瓜二つ。天狗、その正体はやはり古代イスラエル人なのか。さらに我々にもたらされた驚くべき情報が。
天狗が頭にこうつけている黒い小さな箱がありますね。頭巾というものですけども、実はユダヤにも同じようなものがあります。
なんと天狗の頭巾がユダヤにも存在する。それは本当なのか。我々は東日本唯一のユダヤ教団を訪ねた。すると。
こんにちは。こんにちは。Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
迎えてくれたのは代表のヘンリー・ノア氏。早速天狗の像を見てもらった。
This little box.
興味を示したのはやはり頭巾。
We have something similar. 似てる。
やはり似たものがあるという。それを身につけた彼の姿を見て我々は目を疑った。
そうじゃん、天狗じゃん。何これ。
天狗の正体は古代イスラエル人だった。それを身につけた彼の姿を見て我々は目を疑った。 それはユダヤ教徒の祈りの時の装束。その姿はまさに天狗。
本当だ。何乗っけてんの？いやもう
この頭につけた小さな箱はヒラクリティといい、中に戒律が書かれた紙を入れる神聖なものだといい。さらに彼はユダヤ人にとって最も大切だというヘブライ語で書かれた旧約聖書を見せてくれた。しかしその名前を聞いて我々は耳を疑った。
This Torah scroll
なんとトーラーの巻物、あの虎の巻のことなのか。ユダヤ教徒は修行を終えたその証にトーラーの巻物を読み与えられる。
巻って動物の虎じゃないんだ。
天狗の持つ虎の巻も修行の後に渡される特別なもの。牛若丸が鞍馬の天狗から授かったと言われるあれである。一体なぜ、やはり天狗は古代イスラエル人なのか。
登場しました。江戸時代に描かれたという天狗曼荼羅図をスタジオにお持ちいたしました。上には毘沙門天ですとか不動明王の下にですね7人の天狗が描かれているという。
本当だ。
はい。
みんなつけてる。
みんなつけてますよね。下にいるのが天狗で鼻が高い。
人の顔みたいな感じでリアルですよね、割と。
人の顔だよ完全に。しかもそう外国人の顔ですね。
見たことなければ本当に天狗とか違うものと。
俺人間って誇張することがあるじゃん。だから天狗のお面なんてわざと誇張してギューッと大きくね。
これはもうね関連ありますよ。もうね多分もうそうですよ。
否定しようがないよ
ね。
Leap forward, and some very strong Tengu stories were born. Samurai and Tengu. During the age of the samurai, it so happened that a Tengu descended among humans to become a teacher in the martial arts for a young boy. Yoshitsune, the younger brother of Minamoto no Yoritomo, the first shogun of the Kamakura shogunate, allegedly studies the skill of samurai from a Tengu when he was still a child. After this, we hear similar stories more often, and Tengu slowly gained popularity and importance as goblins, and their appearance and abilities became closer to the image we know today. They became more human-looking, in other words. It was said that the Tengu had the body of a man, but with wings that carried him through the sky as quickly as a falcon. Besides, he had the divine power to see 100 years into the future. Scholars and priests with considered minds were said to become Tengu after they died and lived in the mountains all over Japan, expanding their powers as they multiplied in their remote strongholds. The Tengu had come a long way, from dainty fairies to powerful and wise goblins. But besides their shape, the Tengu turned out to have acquired another human character trait. You guess it. Not humility, no, but rather hybris. As they gained power, strength, and reputation, they tried to take over the entire of the world itself. The Tengu had grown in numbers and sheer power that they slowly began to darken the world, attempting to throw the world into chaos. In the Taiheki text, a historical epic tale, we can read that at this time, the Tengu gathered for a meeting to strategize over a way to dominate the known world. Unlike the pitiful tales of the past, the great Tengu had evolved from the soul's emperors and high priests reincarnate as veritable demon kings. We say that Tengu like fire, fights, and war, and during their meeting, the great Tengu decided to wreak havoc on earth. And history proved them right, as during the Muromachi period, the imperial court was divided into the northern and southern dynasties, which consequently plugged the country into the turbulent period of the Warring States. The Tengu watched in amusement from their lairs, while political chaos, starvation, and killing altogether lasted almost 300 years, only to be concluded by Tokugawa shogunate in early 17th century. Was all of this the dark work of Tengu? Humans tend to blame darker forces for their own faults, but something sinister surely had been going on during this time. It is not that the Tengu lived in the mountains in total seclusion. They are often dressed as yamabushi, people who practice mountain religions. These are aesthetic devotees who studied natural forces and mysticism and gained supernatural powers. As early as 12th century, a collection of stories suggest a deep connection between Yamabushi and Tengu, who share the same territory and became closer and closer to each other, and eventually, in the eyes of the people, blended into one. Humans and demons, united by a dark force. Human assumed Yamabushi dress, an image we know until today. That's the original story of Tengu. From being a pure natural force, they developed human character traits and eventually were said to be responsible for some of the darkest times of Japanese history. Still, there are many shrines in Japan where Tengu are worshipped as gods.
This is Jeremiah 49:10. But I have made Esau bare, I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren, and his neighbors, and he is not. Kahala Yahweh Bashem Elshai Bashem Rakakodash. And I want to give double honors to my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, with the house of David reborn again in this generation. And Shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage, we were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. Salaki for the long videos in the front, Akim, but you know, I've come across this rabbit hole which leads to the explanation of that goblin icon that we all have on our phones, right? The character that we always see, it actually goes back to a Japanese goblin, and really, as we watched in the video, you know, hopefully you read the subtitles, but you know, pretty much you find out that this goblin is actually an anamorphized depiction of AMALEK, the so-called Jewish people, right? Basically the top tribe of the nation of Edom. And when I say Edom, I'm referring to the so-called Caucasian race, because that's the true biblical identity of the Caucasians and the Israelis of the world, right? They go back to a man called Esau. Esau was the wicked brother of Jacob in the Bible, right? Jacob's name was changed to Israel, and from him come the 12 tribes of Israel, from his 12 sons. Well, Jacob's evil brother Esau eventually had offspring, and those offspring, the first grandson, his name was AMALEK. Well, AMALEK, like I said, went on to be the progenitor to all the so-called Jewish people. And the Jewish people, as we've seen in this video, they got around. And why is that? Well, when you go back to the curses that were put on Cain, remember, it tells you that he was cursed that he would be a fugitive and a vagabond, right? Vagabonds are basically wanderers, and we all know that these Edomites, they wander all over the world, okay? And back in those days, there was a lot of areas to wander. Now remember, the time of the Tengu, because the way it works is that the myth of the Tengu, as they were saying, goes back all the way to like the 600 BC or something, or like whatever showed in the video. But those were like different things. Those were like little fairies and little like superstitions. But what happened during the samurai period, right, which was around like 13 to like 16, even into like 1800s, really, if you want to consider the late stages. But ultimately, Edom, these Amalekites especially, they ultimately traveled all the way to the east, right? And How did they do that? Well, they did it through the Silk Road, right? You remember, before the westernized world, the Americas were discovered by the known world at that time, right? Before the Lord revealed that to the inhabitants of the world, this was it, right? If you were a tradesman, a sailor, a businessman, right, importer, exporter, this was where you sold and bought your goods, right? All the different things that were bought around the world were all traversed through this large series of travel routes. Well, look over here, right? Let's zoom in real quick, and you can see that it went right through Israel for the most part, right? The city of Tyre. This is why we always hear about, the kingdom of Tyre, why it was so rich, right? The people of Tyre ultimately would flee after they were destroyed and go over here and create Carthage, right? Which later became a thorn in Rome's side, right? Edom later on. But the point being is that, you had Edom, which was down here in South Israel, right? Where again, you see trade routes. And it goes all the way down to like the Arabian Peninsula. Well, as the video said, these Tengu eventually made a name for themselves in their fighting ability, right? And what's one of Esau's blessings of the Bible? That he would live by the sword. Those were the people that were training, that, for example, that young prince or something that taught him, and at the end of his training, he got the scroll, right? Well, the point being is that from there, that shows that Amalek was, infiltrated the nation of Ammon. And again, if you're unsure what I'm talking about when I say Ammon, I'm talking about the so-called Japanese people. Because when you get into the Bible makes it very clear in Genesis 10 that there are 18 nations. Really, in Genesis 10, it goes into the first original 13 nations, and then the rest of Genesis from 10 on all the way to the end, it is a story of the creation of the next 5 nations, right? That being who was it? Japan, China, the Arabs, and then it was the Caucasians and Israel, right? The Negro, Latino, Native Americans. That's what the rest of the Genesis talks about. But the point being is that Ammon is one of the 18 nations, okay? Ammon is the biblical name of the so-called Japanese people, okay? And you would say it in Hebrew as Amawan, okay? So this shows you in these videos and all these, proofs, like for example, like this, right? In the video, it was probably hard to catch, but he said that the picture of the Tengu, right? This image right here, right? We all see this as the icon on our phone and whatnot. He said that the Tengu mask is of the Hatta people, H-A-A-T. And when you look into the Hatta clan, right? This was considered, it tells you right here, right? From Wikipedia, it says, during the Qin dynasty, was an immigrant clan active in Japan since the Kufan period, right? According to the history of Japan laid out in Nihon Saki. Now, notice this period here. From 250 to 538 AD. Now, remember, these Amalekites, for the most part, they were running Rome, right? Edom, the whole nation of Edom, Rome was basically their city. Now, they were everywhere else too. Just like today, where you have Edomites all over the world. Just like you have Jake all over the world. Really, the world's pretty much all mixed. And within every one of the 18 nations, it's predominantly made up of its, native nation, okay? But for the most part, every nation has been mixed, and it's mixed in between 3 characters: the children of God, the children of men, and the children of Satan. Okay, that's pretty much how it breaks down. Now, that being said, this is about the period where Edom was being kicked out of Rome, right? He basically started getting pushed out once the Judites that were brought into Rome as slaves after the 70 AD conquest of Jerusalem, right, by the Emperor Titus and his son Vespasian, well, those Israelites that were taken to Rome eventually started to rise up in power, right? They won their freedom. They became, generals, governors, and then eventually emperors. And in all this, the political climate changed in Rome, so much so that they changed their whole religious structure, right? From worshiping a pantheon of gods to one God. Well, that left no room for Esau and his, pagan worship, right? So, and in this case here, worshiping AMALEK, right? So ultimately, Esau split. A lot of them went up to the Caucasus Mountains, and in this case here, right? I'm guessing a huge chunk of these Amalekites, right, fled over to Japan. They went all the way to the east of the Silk Road, right? And check this out, right here where Edom's at, right? That travels. There's a major traveling route through ship of going all the way to Japan. Now check this out. There's a great show that was called, I think, The Samurai, and it came out on FX. It came out this last year. It was a very good show, but it shows you how Esau, from England, the Edomites from England, ultimately came into Japan. Like, they snuck in there because ultimately Japan's first contact with the outside world was Portugal, right? So that was, Portugal at the time was a mixture of Edomites and also Jake that came from the Holy Roman Empire, which were again the remnants that were the so-called black Romans that had taken over. Well, the point being is that Portugal had made first contact with Japan, and then there goes Esau, coming on his ships, exploring, being that vagabond, and he ultimately infiltrates and helps the liberal party in Japan destroy its emperor dynasty, and ultimately bring forward like the democracy and the westernized government. That's what that whole movie with Tom Cruise, right, The Last Samurai, is all about. But same thing, that show Samurai on FX, it shows the very introduction where Esau first started to find out about these Ammonites. Well, what we just watched is an example of how Amalek, these Edomites, go into all nations, and in this case, Japan. So a lot of these Japanese people that you see, they're not probably Japanese people, right? They could be Amalekites, they could be Israelites. And I wanted to make this video, and I wanted to tie it in with the current flavor of the week or flavor of the month, it seems. But you have a lot of people thinking that the Israelites are going to be all black, but that tells us in Revelation 7 that that's not true at all, right? Ultimately, it's going to be Israelites coming out of every nation. And this is why, this here is the opposite of what the Lord's looking for, right? But remember, it tells you in the Bible that a false balance is an abomination to the Lord. So the Lord's always going to have good and a bad, right? He's always going to have equal parts of everything. So just how the Lord mixed in Israel, right, us Negro, Latino, Native Americans into the Ammonite bloodline, right, the Japanese bloodline, he also had these Edomites mixed in with them, right? And we could all see, our people have, a flavor for Ammon, right? Including the children of Esau also have a flavor for Ammon, right? It's a thing. So, but now we know that these Edomites, they were considered such horrible people, right? That their characteristics were, well, like the lady said, they were over-exaggerated, right? They were embellished. And eventually, that embellishment of the characteristics of Esau's red skin, for example, right? He likes to say it's white skin, but ultimately it's really pink, right? And these devils, over time, they've taken an image like this and they've made him into a character, right? They've also, venerated him, right? Here he is, Amalek, with the phylactery, right? They call it Teflon, but ultimately inside of it is a scroll of the Torah, right? But the point being is that this is definitely Amalek, right? And like the scripture said, the Lord is revealing these Edomites, right? And why is the Lord doing that, right? Why is the Lord bringing out, this venerated goblin, god that these Japanese people have made, right? They have festivals for it, and they've made a whole little culture out of it. The whole stereotype of Amalek that's been personified as a goblin, somebody who's great with money, good at war, right? But they could be either good or very evil to you, right? That they ended up tricking people. That's ultimately what they say. So that's Ammon basically talking shit about Esau, man. But what does it say? That's going to ultimately happen to these Edomites, right? No matter, where they go, especially the tribe of Amalek. Well, Numbers 24 and 20. And when he looked on Amalek, he took up his parable and said, Amalek was the first of the nations, but his latter end shall be that he perish forever. And that's ultimately the end of these devils, man. See, though they may be, immortalized as caricatures, this is how, we're going to eventually remember these Edomites until they eventually fade away from memory. Because it tells us in the Bible that they're going to, that the memory of them is going to fade away as a dream in the night. That we're going to forget about these Edomites, right? But eventually we're going to, they're going to first become characteristics. Like people are going to be like, did you know that there was red people on the earth? And then people are going to not believe us, right? And that's, that's what the Bible says. But I just wanted to share this. I wanted to show how the Lord is revealing these devils, man. He's bringing out, all these different cultures, pointing out what these Edomites have been up to, man. So much so that, they've become, a mime onto a culture themselves. So either way, Akim, hopefully this video was edifying. Until the next time, I want to give all honor and glory and praises to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahshai, Ba'Shem Ruach HaKodesh. Shalom.